Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a severe weather event that'll be taking place across parts of the United States today, bringing the risk for damaging winds, large to very large hail, and a few tornadoes. I'll give you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, but let's first begin with what's happening across the United States today. We'll first begin with the Midwest, which is an area that we've seen already some severe weather in this morning. We saw some significant damaging winds, even a possible tornado back over in parts of Nebraska and Iowa earlier today. Now, this system is moving into the Midwest, bringing some shower and storm activity, none of which is really severe though anymore, but we are going to see an increased risk for severe weather later this afternoon into the evening hours across a pretty large area in the Midwest, all the way back through the Central Plains. We'll be talking about more on that in just a moment, but definitely a dangerous day of severe weather ahead. We'll talk about more details in just a second. Back over on the East Coast, drier air is ongoing. We're not really seeing as much shower and storm activity, but unfortunately for those in the Northeast, we're going to continue to see a strong jet stream bringing some train of storms pretty much throughout the Ohio Valley and into the Northeast. So flooding concerns will again increase, unfortunately, for those that have already seen plenty of rainfall. So more rain is on the way. It shouldn't be nearly as bad as what we saw in the past about 72 hours, but it will at least bring a few inches of rainfall here over the next few days. Back over on the West Coast, pretty quiet stuff here. Not really a whole lot of activity. We are staying fairly dry. Heat dome still dominating in the southwest United States, keeping areas very warm for this time of the year, with Phoenix, Arizona near 120 degrees as of the last couple of days. Now let's jump right into the severe weather potential for the next several days. But before I do that, I do want to mention I will likely be live covering this severe weather event tonight on our YouTube channel. So make sure that you're subscribed down below and click the bell icon so you're notified if and when I go live. But here's today's risk of severe weather. We have a pretty large area. It looks to be kind of small, you might think at first glance, but it actually will be a bit more significant than what it looks. So let me just kind of discuss what we're looking at here. So currently we have an enhanced risk of severe weather back near the Kansas City metro area. That's going to be west of St. Louis, back through areas near Joplin, Missouri. That's the area that we're really watching for today for some significant hail, damaging winds, and potential for maybe an isolated tornado. Further off to the north and eastern parts of the Midwest, this is an area that is going to be quite concerning if the correct environment is in place. If we see enough destabilization, we very well could see the potential for a couple of tornadoes. We might even see a strong tornado. That's not out of the question here. So we really have to watch this area very closely, but it's a conditional risk. That means that there's a chance that we do not see any tornadic activity, but there's also a pretty solid chance that we at least see a couple tornadoes, which again, one could be strong if the environment is proper, which it looks as of right now, it's on track to be in the right position to be able to produce that threat for an increased risk of severe weather in terms of tornadoes as well. Now, the most concerning area for damaging winds today will be across areas in the Central Plains. That's going to include areas like Missouri and Kansas. That hatched area represents the potential for damaging winds exceeding 75 miles per hour in a couple of isolated storms. So definitely make sure you're taking the proper precautions there. But the damaging wind threat does exist all the way through the Midwest and again back through the Central Plains and even into the Northeast, by the way. There will be an isolated chance for maybe some isolated damaging winds there later today as well. Large hail concern, there will be a chance for at least some hail upwards of baseball size. It's going to include areas near the Kansas City metro area back through central Kansas. This is an area to watch for as well for some significant hail activity as well. But back over in the Midwest, there's a low chance for at least some sporadic hail there as well. Here's your tornado risk. Again, the Storm Prediction Center just recently upgraded this area to a 5% chance within a 25-mile radius of a tornado threat. That does mean at least a couple tornadoes are possible in this area. Again, I would not be surprised if there was a strong tornado, though, if any tornadoes do end up developing. Again, if there were to be anything like that today, we'll probably be live for it here on our YouTube channel, so make sure you subscribe down below. All right, let's talk a bit more about the setup for this event, then we'll talk about the timing. One of the biggest things with the Midwest right now is that right now it's a bit more stable because we're seeing shower and storm activity this morning, but we are likely to see a new air mass filter in later this afternoon, which will actually be allowing more instability to grow in this area. You'll notice this little pocket of instability here around 4 to 5 o'clock this afternoon. That's a bit concerning here for this setup because the shear that we'll have available this afternoon will be enough, again, for that tornado risk to be a bit higher across areas near the Chicago metro and then back into areas like northern Indiana. But again, this is a bit of a conditional threat still. It might not happen, but if we do see that instability grow into this area, that's going to destabilize the atmosphere, and then we're going to see that chance for severe weather really start to increase. Tornado parameter as well, it is much more increased across this area according to the HRR model, which just basically means that we have more shear in this area available for the potential for a couple of tornadoes. So definitely going to be something to watch out for this afternoon and as well as into the early evening evening hours. Now let's talk about the timing. We'll begin with this afternoon across areas in Illinois and Indiana. You'll see the showers and storms will be moving through areas near Chicago and as well as Arlington Heights and closer to Rockford right around 12 to 1 o'clock this afternoon, and eventually going closer to 3 to 4 o'clock. Notice this next area of showers and storms. This is what's going to end up developing if we have that destabilized atmosphere across areas in northern Illinois. Once we get closer to 5 o'clock, these are the storms that we're watching for that increased risk of a tornado. So it's going to be during really the rush hour commute that we really need to watch these storms very closely in northern Illinois. Once we get closer to 6 to 7 o'clock, those storms move off to the east. I do expect them to be on a bit more of a weakening trend as they move towards Indiana and as well as into Michigan, but I could not at least rule out at least an isolated tornado or two as these move off to the east. And by 10 o'clock, most of that storm activity weakens out. And notice more storms will fire up across another area back over in Missouri and as well as southern Illinois, and this will be producing the threat for some sporadic hail and damaging winds. Tornado risk with that seems very low at this time. Here's a better look at Missouri as well as Kansas. This is where we're watching for a significant severe weather potential as well. So right around 5, 6 o'clock, it's going to stay pretty dry during rush hour, but we'll start to watch some supercells form right around 6 to 7 o'clock. These ones initially will be producing an increased risk for damaging winds and large hail, but large hail will definitely be a bigger concern with these initial cells. So around 7 o'clock or so, be mindful. There could be some destructive hail upwards of baseball size. Once we get closer to 8 o'clock, a lot more storms are forming. We're going to see a lot of instability in this area today. So these storms firing off around 7, 8 o'clock are very likely. And this will end up becoming a bit more numerous to widespread as we head closer to 9 to 10 o'clock tonight. And eventually going closer to 11 o'clock, these storms start to drift a bit further down to the south and east, with damaging winds starting to take over as the main concern, but large hail definitely still not out of the question. By 1 in the morning, storms moving down to the south and east near Rolla, east of Springfield, and by 3 in the morning, those storms are all kind of collapsing down to the south and east through southern parts of Missouri, eventually going to Arkansas, but which, by the way, Arkansas could be dealing with more flash flooding concerns with this area of storms as we go into tomorrow morning, so definitely some concerning stuff there for sure. Now, as we head into tomorrow, there is another chance for severe weather. It's a pretty large area. Once again, we do have a slight risk of severe weather. It does include areas back over in Ohio and as well as western Pennsylvania. Marginal threat goes all the way from the high plains and the central plains back into the northeast, and then a very tiny marginal threat back over in Iowa. Main concern tomorrow is just damaging winds and large hail across this area. It should remain a pretty isolated threat. And then the tornado risk across areas like Ohio is slightly higher, but it's a pretty low chance overall. It's not too concerning, but just make sure you have a tornado action plan in place just in case there. Here's a quick look at the timing across Ohio for tomorrow. Storms will fire up really quickly tomorrow, right around 2 to 3 o'clock. That's when we're going to see a lot of shower and storm activity out there, but a lot of this will just be damaging winds and large hail. I wouldn't rule out an isolated tornado, but the threat still remains quite low for tomorrow. And as we go into the late evening hours, those storms move off to the east, so a lot less concerning then. Going into Friday, flying fences Friday, we do currently have a slight risk of severe weather in parts of the central plains that includes southern Kansas. Marginal threat for the rest there of the central plains and back into areas even near the Dixie Alley. This is mainly going to be for the threat of damaging winds, large hail, and maybe a brief tornado. We'll talk about more on this as well in our next forecast. Don't forget, we'll probably be live tonight for the severe weather potential in the Midwest and as well as parts of the Central Plains, so make sure that you're subscribed down below and as well as click the bell icon so you're notified when we go live.